So good afternoon, everybody. This is one of the most exciting panel discussions that you will ever, listen to, because we have the crown jewels of 5G product development, startup founders here. I also have, one in Boston dialing in, Rajesh, who actually did his, education in India and kind of moved on to the US like many intellectuals in the past. Did a parallel wireless startup, sold that company, and then started a new company on 5G. So he's kind of dialed in from Boston. So thank you so much. I know it's pretty early in Boston, Rajesh.
No, I'm on my third cup of coffee.
Okay,
so
great. Thank you so much, guy. Okay, so we have Abhijit from Niral Networks. He does the core of technology on 5G. And you'll hear a lot about what he's going to talk about, and he's kind of changing the way the networks are going to kind of be built. Hemant, of course, a veteran in telecom. He's one of the founders of Saankhya Labs, which got acquired by Tata's, and a lot of startups are going to follow his path, I believe, including Astrome that I run. And Himamshu, again, another veteran. He's one startup which actually does silicon, upwards to a product in the wireless telecom area. Okay, so welcome, gentlemen. Great to see you here. I know we've known each other for a long time, all of us. So it'll be great to kind of hear what is going on in India. I mean, the entire session is going to be about deep tech, right? So it's going to be product development. 4G, 5G products coming out of India for the world. For the first time, you see companies, founders who are actually cracking a patent, functionalizing that into a particular product, and also catering to the demands of the country and then also to community outside the world. You heard Dr. In the previous session, he was talking about how do you make the individual farmer rich, right? Because India is all about, catering to the individuals, right? So one of the big things that 4G, 5G wireless telecom can do is to provide that connectivity to that individual so that economic activity increases by an order of magnitude, right? So how are we going to do that? So let's hear from the experts. So my name is Venki, Kumaran, I think most of you know me. I'm the president of Astrome. We're also a wireless company. We're kind of disrupting the backhaul space, which is nothing but, a radio connecting to all the radios that these gentlemen do, which in turn gets connected to your cell phones and tablets and all that, okay? So we are the guys who actually replace the fiber at the back end, right? So that's what we do as Astrome. So let me start first. I think, Rajesh, since you're away, let me start with you. Okay, so why don't you kind of, introduce yourself, Rajesh, and tell the world what actually you're kind of, building in that entire 5G product ecosystem.
Sure. Thanks, Venki. And thank you, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here. And I've been actually dialed in. I saw last two sessions as well. As I said, I'm on my third cup of coffee, so I'm wide awake and got all the caffeine boost I needed. So as a background, I graduated from IIT Roorkee in '93. And what I say is I was on the forefront of the telecom right off the bat, basically. So I joined a company called Hughes Software Systems back then, mid-90s. And we were working on a GSM system at that time. And I've been fortunate to be part of many of these telecom revolutions. So I got I moved to US, I got into various startups in a voice over IP world and commoditized the whole ecosystem of voice over IP. Then I started a company Parallel Wireless on Open RAN, which I'll talk more about it possibly later. And a few years ago, we started a company called A5G Networks, where we focus on, we call it autonomous 5G networks, which kind of brings network together. And again, I'll talk more in detail. We are a Make in India compliant startup based in Pune in India. We have offices in US and planning on a few other expansions.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for the brief intro, Rajesh. Thank you very much. So Abhijit, why don't let them know what exactly you do?
Thanks, Venki. And yeah, it's absolute pleasure to be out here to talk about 5G and the technologies being built out of India. So yeah, I'm Abhijit, co-founder at Niral Networks. So um, how we started the journey is that before starting Niral, I had another company called eTrans where we used to do consulting work for predominantly the operators. So the operators, while working with them, what we figured out is that at least some of the operators were facing quite a bit of a challenge working with the big, I can say the big product companies, and they wanted the system to be more open, like where multiple companies or multiple products can coexist together instead of being a single product. And that was we were working in 4G, I would say. Then that's where we saw the opportunity that in 5G, there is a lot of, I would say that how the architecture is, there is a great opportunity for multiple companies to come together to build an ecosystem. Not a single company, but multiple smaller companies, multiple startups can come together to create an ecosystem. So that's where we are. That's when we took a decision, okay, let's upgrade ourselves from consulting to a product company, and that's how Niral Networks was born. And as Venki told, we work on the 5G core. Code is required to basically orchestrate and manage multiple radios and to create the end-to-end ecosystem. The other part is that our focus more than the ISPs is into the enterprises. Like how like typically we are all used to using Wi-Fi, right? Especially in enterprises. But we think that there is a disruption going to happen with Industry 4.0 and beyond, and that's where the cellular network, that's 4G or 5G in this point, will actually be part in the enterprises. So that's what we want to do. Like what you talk about Wi-Fi at home, very soon you talk about 5G or private 5G in enterprises, especially in the industrial sector. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. We need more people like you. So, Hemant, you're the most successful out of all of us out here. So, why don't you kind of tell us what you do now and how is it different from what you guys were before becoming a Tata company?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Venki. Thanks to Tai for this opportunity to talk about our, the 5G vision. I think, there have been, if I go back to Saankhya Labs, we started in 2006, 2007. We were, basically looking at semiconductors directed towards wireless communication technologies. We started that, in those days it was sort of, people found it, maybe a bit amusing that you can have a semiconductor company coming out of India. But, that motivated us more. So it was a journey of about, I think about 14 years. And during that journey, the company went through a number of pivots, as we call in the startup world. We were a startup for a very long time, right? And even today, we do consider that, at least in terms of the mindset. We started with semiconductors as a product, but primarily targeted towards wireless communication. And our chips were, we came out with successful chipset. We raised funding from the likes of Intel Capital, General Motors, Sinclair Broadcasting, all US companies. And all of them were strategic. We basically, pivoted towards systems because as a semiconductor company, we found it, a challenge to kind of get into mainstream merchant silicon worldwide. But we were fortunate that, because of the chip architecture that we had, which was highly programmable, we went into very diverse communication technologies, like right from SATCOM. We have our satellite modems are running on Indian Railways trains. We have the same things in boats, fishing boats. And in broadcasting, in the direct-to-mobile space, there are new technology that we are pushing both in US and in India. So we pivoted and became a systems company that built systems around our semiconductor chipset. And somewhere, in all of these multiple pivots, we also dabbled in rural broadband, which was not 4G, but 4G-like on a narrow bandwidth. We tried for that, but it was a little bit of a challenge in terms of spectrum policy, especially in India. But we found that whatever we developed there was a very good sort of legacy or a platform for us to go after 5G. And today we are into mainstream 5G on the infrastructure side. So we basically develop radios and baseband, base stations, basically the boxes that go on top of your cellular towers, and the boxes that go in the room below. So that's basically the infrastructure side of 5G. And we continue to be in the broadcast, SATCOM, and 5G technologies. So we see that there's a sort of a convergence that is emerging out of all these. I mean, today you see Apple iPhone having satellite technology. There is great demand for video on your phone. So we do see that that is a right stage, and in the middle of that, we basically in this market we saw that you need to have a bigger platform, and we became part of the Tata Group. We are part of Tejas Networks, and we see a great future with all these opportunities in the geopolitics. There's a shot for Indian technology to come out. I think that has also been a sort of a stimulus for the Indian ecosystem. So we are seeing a great future for the Indian 5G and telecom ecosystem in general. We wish to be part of that. So that's
thank you. Thanks, Hemant. Thanks for that nice insight on the journey. So Himamshu, I know you also been doing exactly what Hemant was doing. So what's changed? Why don't you tell us what's going on and what's changed?
Hello, thanks Venki for putting me on this panel, and
Thanks for coming.
Sure. So just to give a small background, we are Signalchip. We founded Signalchip in 2010. I had a background in Texas Instruments before that, me and my co-founders. So we built some of the best chips, which really were worldwide #1 selling chips in broadband communication when we were there in TI. So at some point of time we felt we could do that as an Indian company, right? So in 2010 we started Signalchip with what we knew really well is to make really optimal chips for communication systems, which have some complex math which has to be done and has a lot of requirement on analog, RF, and baseband together. So we saw that there was this small cell requirement. The base stations were becoming smaller in the network, and it required something, a very efficient implementation in the silicon to make that proliferation of small cells into the larger market. So we thought that was an idea, and we went behind that. Of course, the journey was longer than what we thought, but it's been interesting. In 2015, we came up with the first RF chipset that we built, which is a transceiver chip which can handle 3G, 4G, and some amount of wireless networks as well. In 2019, we came up with a chipset called Agumbe, which is the first chipset for 4G and 5G base stations from India in that manner. So this chipset can do complete baseband, RF, and all the networking functions in a single chip. And also we have variants which can handle the macro base stations and also the micro base stations. So these have been built, and now in 2019 we went ahead and as we were seeing, we had the silicon in hand. We were demonstrating calls, but the systems had to be built around them. So we started yet another company called Signaltron, which actually took up that job and built systems around these chips. And today we have base stations which are 4G, we have RUs which are 5G, which are built on the chips that have been done by us at Signalchip. As of today, there are some deployments also happening on our 4G base stations as part of Universal Service Obligation Fund. This is kind of connects to the previous speakers, this one, where these networks are targeted to cover the rural last mile, which has not been covered yet, kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
So that's the so that's been the story as of now for us.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. So thanks for that, Himamshu. So let's kind of dive deep into the product ecosystem. So Hemant, let me start with you. So where do you see the challenges and opportunities, especially for Indian product makers in the wireless telecom device segment? You know, so to enable a 5G product, you know, is not a small joke, right? So what do you think are the opportunities and challenges from a product development standpoint?
So I think opportunities are, you know, based on the talent that is available. I think India has had a significant, background in terms of the talent pool, whether the product companies existed in India or not. All of the multinationals, like, you know, what Himamshu mentioned, had already established their bases in India. A large, at least 3 decades of manpower and talent has been built on the technology side. So definitely that is, that is an opportunity. In terms of the other things that have opened up, as I mentioned, because of couple of things. One was the geopolitical situation around China and Chinese telecom companies. I think that opened a big gate. That was one. The other part, in a way, is the ORAN, ecosystem, where basically a market that was, base stations and the access equipment would come from few companies, the big 4. But with this, there is a play. The playground has sort of opened up for other players to come in.
Got you.
And I think that's these two discontinuities of the sort. They have opened up definitely a big opportunity. I think, and like what Abhijit mentioned, it's a ecosystem where you have multiple components in the network which come together. And fortunately, India has its bases covered on all of these in terms of the talent or the expertise. So it's a great opportunity, and these are huge markets. I mean, even if Indian companies capture 10% of that, we are talking about billions of dollars of market. So that's definitely very.
Got you. Thanks, Hemant. Thanks for opening that up. So I think before we kind of delve into the most controversial topic about ORAN versus proprietary, I think let's talk to Himamshu. Himamshu, what challenges have you faced? Because you've been in product development for quite some time. So can you just talk about the challenges that you faced and how are you overcoming that today?
Okay. Challenges are many, right? So to really pick a few and specifically tell, I think it depends. At different phases, we face different types of challenges. I think many of them may just be what a typical startup goes through, right? I think the day one, the challenge was funding, probably, right? So, but throughout, I think the critical challenges have been being able to, one of the biggest ones I think which keeps coming is to hire the right talent, keep them in, train them, keep them in. That's a tricky one. And while you get a good set of people, you are in a constant churn with people probably leaving sometimes and stuff like that. That is one challenge which keeps happening. There are challenges in terms of market and also having to build a semiconductor product. The other big challenge is the design cycle time, because a chip takes a long time to build, and as a startup to go and do that and try to get revenue out of the product is yet another thing which I'm sure Hemant also. So you require a patient investor who is ready to. So you really require a lot of support from those sides. Customers is yet another challenge, but our experience is that you need to have the right product, then the customers will come in. Is the feeling that we have. So I think probably those are the challenges which I would.
Thanks a lot. So I mean, I think the audience may be wondering that we are a country of 1.3 billion people, and startups are finding it difficult to get talent. So I think that's something that we may want to talk about it at a later point of time. I know we are talking about very deep tech, very, very specialized skills to come into the market. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you're not able to find people. But I think let's go to the Boston man. We'll make sure that you're not sleeping, Rajesh. So I think you're done companies, you're built companies, right? So it'd be good to hear, what are the key factors to consider, right? For especially because we are talking about 5G and beyond. What do you think are the key factors that one should consider before building a 5G-enabled product in the market? I want to delve deep into that before we get on to the nicer parts of things.
Sure. Thanks, Venki. So, and I'm awake. Caffeine has kicked in well.
Good.
So, I think there are few things here, and I echo actually the sentiments of all the fellow panelists. The challenge for a startup is funding, right? And thankfully, like Bharat Innovation Fund, as well as Inflexer, they had been our promoters. So the funding is one. The second one is, right, there's a notion that, hey, as a startup, you have to focus on niche. And I don't buy into that, right? If you're not trying to build something world-class, it doesn't matter. You will get a 0% of the share, right? Market could be huge, and, we can theoretically talk about 10, 20% revenues. And what I saw firsthand was like focusing on these niche problems and niche, let's say rural and all those other areas. The challenge is, while those are interesting, those prolong our journey, and those prolong us into further, let's call it a low quality or low bar kind of settings, right? And not force us into something where we are competing with, the likes of Huawei, Ericsson, Nokia, where they are always on the forefront of these technologies. So that's one, is a mindset where whether you're talking to, VCs, or you're talking to, any quote unquote advisors, they're all asking, hey, focus on the niche, right? What is your niche? And get into that. So that's where, when you are trying to build a world-class things, competing on a global scale, that something hurts, right? When you are like so far behind on that. So that is, when I'm building a startup, our focus is, where are you trying to do? What are you trying to compete on? And it's blank and point, right? Point blank and simple. Trying to be the best of the world in what we do, and best as in competing head on against, the likes of Huawei, Ericsson's, Nokia's of the world, right? On that domain. And that is one of the challenge of a mindset. And similarly, getting a talent, right? Obviously, it has a lot of dimensions into it, but finding people who have actually done that, right? With a product mindset, right? While the services industry is big, service industry has its own kind of excellence. The product mindset and entrepreneurial journey, where you're living and breathing and dying for success or failure of your product, right? That is something, you only build a successful startup with that type of team. And luckily for us, we have built a great team who comes from a similar background, right? So those are kind of the key things I would share here, that, getting the talent, which is product centric, and keeping the bar very, very high. Granted, your first opportunities may come from some places where the incumbent solution is very expensive, but innovation and keeping the bar high will do, any company a
Great.
huge favor.
Thank you. Thanks, Rajesh. I think I echo what you said completely, because I think the only way to disrupt the big boys, right, in the telecom world, is to kind of have something which is very unique. And that uniqueness comes when you can identify that sect, which is maybe a patent around what Astrome's done, right, which is around digital beamforming, which the big boys are not able to crack in 80 gigahertz, which is like the E-band that is going to be the backhaul of the future for 5G, right? So that's a niche that if startups can kind of look at starting from a patent, functionalizing that into a product, and then getting on to fulfilling the demand of the industry. I think that's one area that that can disrupt the big boys and can create a lot of opportunity for startups, right? So thank you so much for bringing that up. So let's quickly move on to how are we kind of implementing what you have developed in India specifically, right? So Abhijit, what are the kind of use cases you're seeing from the products that you have developed, and how is it kind of helping community in India, right?
Thanks, Venki. Yeah, I mean, once you develop the product, that too deep tech or telecom products, as like Himamshu and Hemant mentioned, it is a long product cycle. So ultimately, the main thing is that we should be able to sell the products, and it should be of very good world-class products, which can also be taken outside India. So from my perspective, what we have been more focused is on how we can implement a 5G on an enterprise scale. Okay, now when you talk about 5G, I would also like to tell that while till 2G or 3G maybe the focus, when you know cellular, it was mainly for operators like Airtel, Geos, building a cellular network across the country, maybe in India or worldwide, right? But now things are changing. I mean, when you talk about 5G, I mean, one part, of course, is the ISP's network. I mean, Jio, Airtel, all of them has launched the 5G network. But there are also 5Gs which can be put in a limited locality, or like probably in a mining site, in an oil and gas site, where too then you need a very good connectivity. I mean, when you talk about automation, right, digitization, automation that we talk about, ultimately to enable that you need a good connectivity. And using existing technologies for connectivity, especially when you want to automate a big plant, let's say a mining plant. So I visited like at least 5 to 6 mining sites till now. It's a pretty big area. I mean, it's around, it can start anything from 2 square kilometer, which is on the smaller site, to around 20 square kilometer on the a mining site. And it is predominantly outdoor, right? And you have lot of, their challenge is basically how they can track all the dumpers. Dumpers are big trucks, which actually carry the ore, like extracts that and takes it to a site from where they can send it to the railway station for the next level of, you can say that refining the ore. Then how they can actually shovel, there are something called shovels, which are basically used to extract the ore from the mining site, right? So, I mean, their idea is how they can automate that, how they can ensure safety, like they can, less people can be, the less number of people are there in the site, then you can protect the people, right? How you can use robotics, or in the future, how you can automate that area. Now, these things need real-time communication, mobility, and then you also need to cover such a big area, right? So this stuff, you cannot do with the existing networks. So I'll give you an example. Like when I visited one of the last site, we saw that they have 5 networks. One network, walkie-talkie, to manage communication between the mining people. There is another network just to manage fleet management, like the dumpers and the shovel. Then there is another network for IoT management. They have some IoT devices, 3 networks, 3 or 4 networks. Now, each of them comes with a different technology. Walkie-talkie uses narrowband. Then there are IoT, which is running on LoRa technology. Then there is some other, like I was studying the fleet management, that is a different kind of technology. And some cases it uses the 4G of the operator, okay? And safety, security is very important. Along with that, privacy is important. Now, if it is going to a network, to the operator's network, it is going to a public network, which they generally don't want. They want the data to be inside the site, especially when it's mining or manufacturing, oil and gas, any of this, right? So now they want how they can have a single solution on top of which they can run all these networks. Managing 3, 4, 5 networks is not easy. That too for an enterprise like mining or oil and gas, right? They don't by default come with the IT or network infrastructure mindset, right? So just think about that. If you can replace those 5 networks by a single network, which can provide everything, starting from video, voice communication, to mobility management of the dumpers, to, emerging technologies, of course, IoT, robotics, drone. That's exactly what 5G can do. Of course, it needs to create an entire 5G network which the operator does within the site, but now that is doable. And you don't need the big boys to do that. You have the ecosystem in India to do that. That's, I think, the best part. And really, like when we visited, we were pretty, happy plus confident to tell that we as a, when I mean is we as a team from India, we can do that. What you need basically to start with, you need the radio that Himamshu or Hemant was mentioning about the 5G radios are definitely needed. Radio is divided into two parts, the hardware and the software part. Then you need a core, 5G core, which we work on, basically to integrate the radios. Even Rajesh also works on that. So to integrate that, you need a packet core. Then you need the end devices, like the IoT devices, the mobile phones. Those are available. So once you bring all those things into play, the equipment and the infra, and also the application, like mining needs a drone-based application. All those things has to be within the site, because they also don't want it to be on the cloud in a lot of cases. So the application should be running on an edge cloud kind of platform. So this, I think, 4 or 5 components kind of build the entire ecosystem on top of which you can run a private network. The operator's network, I think, is on similar lines, but on a much bigger scale.
You forgot the backhaul from Astrome.
Oh, yeah. Okay, no, I think that's a very key point. I need to mention that. So when you go to a mining site, right, what it happens is that the mines, the radios get connected to the backhaul, which is like a core or where the applications can reside. Now in a mining site, they are always excavating. So you cannot put a fiber. Generally, predominantly, fiber can be used to put that. But when you go to a mining site, you need to put it as a wireless, because fiber can get cut. They don't, in a mining site, put any fiber wired thing. Even the electricity there is not really on a wired. Sometimes they put solar. Even the radio stations there, they put on a trolley so that they can move the radio. So everything is mobile. So today they are doing excavation in one hill. Tomorrow they will do the excavation in another hill. So they will move the mobile infrastructure to another hill. So you cannot put fiber or things. Thanks, Venki, for bringing that up. Yeah, wireless backhaul is also very key on that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Abhijit, for considering Astrome's backhaul instead of fiber. So thank you so much. So I think let's move on to how the ecosystem is developing in India to support people like all of us, right? So I was told that the Honorable Minister for Communications under the chairmanship of Ashwini Vaishnavji came out with a 500 crore telecom fund to fund startups, right? So can you talk about how that has helped you in your journey, and is that real at all, Himamshu?
It's very real. For sure. Yeah. So we've seen a big change in the amount of support that we have got from the ecosystem over the last few years, and there's a lot of support coming from Department of Telecom in this one, even MeitY as well. There are different schemes which have been formulated, and we have been lucky to be recipients of some of them, and in our journey towards creating the 4G, 5G networks. There has been a scheme called DCIS, which has been pretty successful. Third version of that is going on, and they have identified startups which are and can make a difference to this technology in India. And 3 rounds of grants have been given to startups under this. And also, there's one more thing which, of course, you and I both have. This one is, as I mentioned earlier, there has been this USOF scheme where we have been asked to pilot our systems in certain rural locations so that we can actually install our 4G, 5G base stations and make them work with real users as part of BSNL network. And even for this, there has been some funding which the government has given. It's one of the greatest opportunities, I would say, more than the funding itself, the opportunity to do testing of your equipment in a live network is a big thing. I mean, because wherever we have tried to go and sell our chip or our system, the first question they ask is, where have you deployed, right? Now, unless somebody lets you deploy, you will never be able to answer that question. So it always used to be a chicken and egg problem. And in this case, by this deployment, we are now going through the rigor of actually making these equipment field worthy and putting it across. And on top of it, if the particular customer here, BSNL, if he funds you to do that, I think that's something really big. So in this again, these kind of supports were not that easy to come by earlier, if you look at it, right? And the other fund that you talked about, TTDF, that is the Telecom Technology Development Fund, which has been earmarked. There's about 500 CR per year, which is supposed to be spent on developing these technologies, either through academia or through private industry. So there's a big change in mindset where there's a recognition that it's going to be the startups, it's going to be the MSMEs that will actually trigger innovation in these domains, along with the academia, right? So we did not have that kind of openness earlier. But today we are seeing, and the numbers are not, they are kind of in the tune that is needed for these kind of, solving a 5G problem or a 4G problem, taking from a chip all the way to the implementation is a fairly large investment. And huge companies put all their money on that, right? So somewhere in India that fillip was needed, and it is now definitely coming from the government side. So I feel this probably has been the best time to be around here in terms of getting some help from there. A lot of other encouragement is coming from the GOI, the Atmanirbhar program. When we started, it was there in our heart, right? Today it was what things have to be, right? So in this manner also, there is a lot of support which is coming in, and they all have their implementation processes which we are trying to figure out. But I think it's never been this good. Let's put it that way. Right? So
fantastic. So I think it's thank you so much for opening that up and giving an insight about how the government today is come forward, and I think it's doing its job, especially the Department of Telecommunications and the Ministry of Electronics and IT. They're all supporting silicon-based startups. They're supporting wireless product-based startups, software in wireless, in telecom. They're all supporting. And there are grants to the tune of a couple of crores being given. And mind you, this is equity-free. There is no interest rate on this particular grant that is given to you. Neither do they take equity, right? So India now has come up to age from at least, the government standpoint to make Atmanirbhar products coming out of India for the world. And that's what you see. There are 4 startups in the telecom wireless area that got the first pilot order to go and connect gram panchayats to villages and give them broadband internet. So that is a huge fillip, especially for startups like us, coming in from none other, not from the industry yet, but from the government. Okay, so we from the industry, from as a startup industry, we believe that the big industrialists should make note of this and also start to open up their industry, their customers, to startups like us to give the first pilot. When the government is able to come forward, why not the big industrialists? Okay, so this is maybe an ask from the panelists to everybody watching. I think this is beaming online, whoever is in the other side of the world or wherever. It's time for the industry to come forward and experiment with world-class products coming out of India, right? So the pilot orders have been given, grants have been given from the government, and I think the next is the VC investor ecosystem. I see a couple of my friends from VC industry out here, and I think we would urge them to also come forward and support deep tech ecosystem, especially people who are actually building products for India and the world, right? So Hemant, you want to say something about it?
Yeah,
Talking about funding, because you've gone through the entire journey.
Yeah.
Right?
So So we, actually we feel a bit like the generation of Gavaskars and Vengsarkars, right, and Kapil Devs. I remember, we started pitching for a lot of these, with the government way back in 2007, and it has been, I think the ecosystem kept on under various industry bodies. We kept on, going and visiting. Giving presentations that this is what needs to be done. And I think I'm glad that, in India, the system moves slowly, okay? And sometimes we need a crisis to make, progress, right? So both of these have happened, right? I mean, the integrated effort over the last 15 years has had an effect, the constant lobbying, and really happy to see that, there's this concept where India actually today dares to think that it can do 5G on its own, right? I mean, I think that if you ask me 5 years back or maybe, a few years back before that, I would have laughed at it, right? I mean, yeah, maybe, in a dream situation it can happen, right? But to see that happening in front of us, right, where opportunities are open and there is a belief. So first thing is that the government has to, or the country has to believe that this is possible in India. Then everything will flow. And there's talent, there's no dearth of that money, right? So I think this Atmanirbhar part, and if you see the rest of the world, right? I mean, in US it has been DARPA and, these NASAs of the world, which have, brought that cutting edge innovation, right? Even Taiwanese government backed them, Israel government backs them. So that is really required when you are in a fledgling sort of a ecosystem. Once that happens, the bar is set, right? The companies come up. And then once you have tackled a market in India, you have seen a big deployment like these pilot deployments or larger ones through the government support. Then not only the Indian private sector, but the whole world is your playground. I think it's really something that I'm happy to see.
Fantastic. Thanks, Hemant. But thanks for all the hard work that you did 5-7 years ago. And I think the startups who have come in the last 4-5 years are able to kind of, benefit from all that policy work that you guys did it and push the government.
Hopefully we also benefit.
Yeah, you also, you already benefited anyway. Yeah, they're one of the most poster boys of the telecom world today, right? So anyway, I think we'll, in the interest of time, I think we'll throw open the floor to Q&A from the audience if somebody has. We are free to take questions. Anybody? Yeah, so if there are no questions, looks like either we've done a great job or we've done a bad job, okay? So final thoughts, Rajesh, final thoughts. I know you're kind of, you're far away, so any thoughts? What do you think, what's your advice to budding entrepreneurs who are sitting out here, in general, if they have to get into a product-based idea, what's your advice to them?
I think there are two aspects here. One is perspective. Other one is like a deeper knowledge of the things, like a why aspects. And the third one is keeping the bar and innovation very high. And what I mean by perspective, I was listening to a session where people were talking 5G use cases, right? And comparing, we can do that with 4G, with 5G. My perspective is different again, having built parallel wireless in my previous life. The reason we talk 5G is not because a lot of use cases can be done by 4G. The reason we talk 5G is because 5G is giving a brand new spectrum. And that's the piece a lot of people forget actually, why the 5G opportunities exist. Not because it's an incremental better G technology, it is because there's a newer spectrum, right? If the new spectrum wasn't given to a bunch of these companies like, Geos and Airtels and Vodafones of the world, there isn't a new spectrum. So that's one perspective. And that perspective is what brings the new use cases for people, really. So again, okay. Knowing, if you look just from the surface point of view, you may see opportunities differently. But if you go deeper into like, new spectrum, it's like, we used to have 2-lane highway. Now I have a 10-lane highway. What else can I build besides, do these things, and that will give you actually a more leverage in your innovation. The second aspect I talk about is innovation, where don't forget patents, right? I personally have 100+ patents.
Very nice.
Don't forget that, right? You have to be very innovative for you to survive, for your startups to survive. So make sure, don't underestimate the power of patents. Again, that just shows that how innovative you are.
Absolutely, Rajesh. I think thanks for bringing that patent story out, because I think, we're already seeing that in our world. And I think every deep tech startup who wants to kind of get into this in the fray should actually start from a patent going forward, so that they're kind of, unique, not just in India, but for the world, right? With that, thank you so much, Rajesh, for staying up, getting up very early. I know it's pretty early, and have a great day ahead. Thank you so much, panelists. Himamshu, I know you have a hot stop. Hemant, thank you so much for coming. Abhijit, all the best. And thanks again for making this a very enlightening show, right? So thank you, audience. Thanks for listening to us patiently.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.